Ready to take your verdicts and jury selection to the next level? Jury consultant Harry Plotkin and trial lawyer Dan Kramer are your ticket to tipping the scales before trial begins. You're not just picking a jury, you're picking justice. Produced and powered by LawPods.
All right, welcome back to another exciting episode of Picking Justice. Harry, what's going on, dude? You been in court at all?
Yeah, I got two trials closing tomorrow.
All right.
Which by the time this comes out will either be all over my social media or buried forever and never mentioned again. So, and we'll cut this part. We'll insert me saying no. I don't have any trials.
Yeah, haven't been hired.
Deliberating.
Yeah, it is always funny when the trial posts just go silent.
Yeah, it's, especially when it's like, you've been seeing the same lawyer post a million times, closing today, and then it's like there's just nothing. It's like, well, come on, what do you think people are thinking? I mean, yeah, maybe he got too big a verdict. He's just super humble.
Yeah, he doesn't want the bad press for.
There's only one lawyer that's that humble, and we have him on our show today. So
that's actually true.
But everybody,
one of the most underrated trial lawyers out there, a really great friend of mine, the wonderful Keith Bruno of Bruno Nalu. Am I saying that right? Am I pronouncing Angela's name right?
No, Nalu.
Nalu. I should know this.
You only went to the ranch with her.
I know. I spent 3 intimate weeks with both you and her. No, I'm really excited to have my good buddy Keith Bruno on. We went to the Jerry Spence Ranch together in 2015 when he had just finished being a criminal defense attorney, right?
Yes, I was kind of still, I had 1 foot in, 1 foot out at that time.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's tried so many cases, truly one of the sharpest trial lawyers out there. I love seeing all your stuff and getting advice from you. You've been on a crazy run recently with so many 8 and even 9-figure verdicts. It's been incredible to see what you've been doing, man. And I can't wait to hear about jury selection, which we were talking before. You have you say it's the weakest part of your game. I hope you don't mind me telling our listeners that, because there's not many weaknesses in your game. But
I was just going to say, you introduced me as being underrated, and then we're talking about jury selection, and they're going to go, no, he's rated exactly right.
He's exactly rated.
I mean, we have to talk about the most difficult part that there is to do. And, I can remember I have a defibrillator. I know you guys know that. But when I got it put in criminal, just like in civil, the first person to go in jury selection is the defense attorney in criminal or the plaintiff's attorney in civil. So it's reversed. And, the judges, they do that whole thing where they just go one person, one person, one person. So it's almost like a countdown. And okay, I'm sitting here at the counsel table. I'm going to have to stand up and start the worst part of my game. And I just had this thing put in, and you don't know when you get a defibrillator, like your biggest fear is not that it goes off and saves you. It's that it goes off randomly because you're nervous and your heart's racing. So of course my heart's racing. I can hear the judge counting down. We're getting to like the last person, and then it's going to be my turn to go. And I think I'm going to stand up. This thing's going to zap me. I'm going to crap my pants, fall on the floor, start shaking in front of all these people. And so then, of course, you're compounding the anxiety. And there's really nothing like that because I don't feel that way for opening statement or closing argument. Really, you've just been preparing so much, you jump in. But jury selection, man, when that countdown is on and you're about to speak for the first time to these, a room full of strangers, and it's hot because there's, 55 people in there sweating after lunch and stuff. It's just brutal.
Yeah, absolutely. But one thing I want us to start with is, I've heard you say this recently, like a couple minutes before we started this, actually, that there's a vibes versus the answer you get during jury selection. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. So this is also why, and this isn't meant to be to promote Harry or to kiss his ass, but if you have this thing that is really difficult to do, and jury selection is really difficult, and it's a job, right? It is a job that you have to pick the best jurors. That's it. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but it's so hard that, the way to prepare is to say to yourself, what type of juror do I want and do I need? And what answers are going to reveal that type of juror? So that's the analytical side of it. That's the game plan. And then, of course, when you get in there and you're nervous and you just want people to like you, I'm not funny. And so I can't make people laugh during jury selection like some people can. And you're like, wow, man, that guy or that girl, she's just the greatest. Well, are they? We don't know. Did they pick the right juror, right? So I've fallen into the trap before where, the person's giving answers that should be red flags, or they're screaming danger zone with their answers, but they're like into you and giving you eyes and like, laughing at your jokes that aren't even jokes or aren't even funny. And I've had this where I have to like then sit down to co-counsel and go like, what do you think about Johnson? I mean, he's kind of cool. And they're like, dude, did you hear any of his answers? Like, he's terrible. And you're like, yeah, but he really seems to like me. And you really have to get over that feeling. And it's hard when like, half the room won't talk to you. And, this one person who's giving answers that aren't very good for your actual case or for an actual juror to be seated in your jury is giving you the eyes. And then, Dan, you've had this, I know, we've all had it, like throughout the presentation of evidence, where jurors are like, oh yeah, or you're giving closing argument, they're nodding, I mean, so much that their head might pop off. And then like they're the person that votes against you or something, which there should be a rule. You either have to be stoic or your actual communication must mirror the way you vote. You cannot do this like, total opposite 180 thing. But they do.
It's funny because I remember I tried my first wrongful death years ago, and I remember I left an attorney on there stupidly. I did it again my last trial, and he was the worst one too. I think I'm like done with attorneys.
You're done?
I'm done. No, I remember because I talked to you, I think after my closing, like she was just like making all these faces during mine. She was like looking at the judge to why are you letting this happen during my closing argument? I remember you told me one time that if you see a juror do that, you'll like call them out or ask the judge to say that you're not allowed to make up your mind yet, and you are clearly making up your mind. Like if you just know this person's just going to destroy you just based on the vibes. Like you've told me you've called out jurors before, haven't you?
Absolutely, I have. Closing argument in a case called Zaidman in San Diego, Judge Bacall's department. My brother-in-law, who was just down there observing, he wanted to see his sister and I do closing argument. And he was in the bathroom and he heard these two jurors, there were two dudes, and they were talking like, this is bullshit. This woman, she should have looked where she was going. It was a slip and fall and all this stuff. And so in my rebuttal argument, I just they were sitting next to each other too. So I zeroed in on them and I'm just like looking them dead straight in the eye. And I'm like, look, some people in this room might have made up their mind and they might have actually communicated to each other about this in the men's restroom 10 minutes ago. That would be making up your mind before you've had a chance to deliberate. It's inappropriate. You shouldn't do that. It's disrespectful to all the other jurors. Now I'm doing it because I know what they're already thinking. I'm not going to change their minds per se, but they will shut the fuck up back there when they're deliberating because all their other jurors, it was uncomfortable. And I don't mind uncomfortable moments in court. All the other jurors are looking at them and they're looking at me and they're like, what is going on here? And so they feel that. And so they weren't going to come back there into deliberations and announce we should wrap this up by noon. This is all bullshit. They actually said nothing during jury selection, which is what my hope was.
Well, what was the decision for you not to bring it up to the judge? You just wanted that moment?
I didn't think that it was a removable offense.
Yeah, I don't think a judge would either.
Yeah, so I knew how it would be handled. It would be like, I'm not saying anybody, but everybody, you just have to keep an open mind. It wouldn't be handled in the way of neutering them, which is what I needed. Because, they were two bros. It was San Diego. They were going to come in there and they were going to tell all the other jurors that this was bullshit, and they would have been vocal about it had I not called them out. I mean, I could have, swept the room and kind of looked down at my feet or looked at all the different jurors or did something like that. But I didn't want to do that. I was pissed
I like that
too. So I wanted to call them out.
No, I think that's really smart because 100% they're going to shut up back there. And sometimes I think I think this is the trial I just had last week. I think the fact that the attorney became the foreperson actually helped keep the verdict up. I think because he was like the one who voted no on some of the non-economic damages. And I think I've talked to Harry about this. Like sometimes if your foreperson will just naturally have to not be as assertive in their opinions. They'll kind of let the room marinate a little bit is what I kind of have noticed a little bit. I don't know if you disagree.
Wait a minute. What do you mean? So because this guy was the foreperson and didn't like non-economic damages, he let others talk about non-economic damages? What's your theory?
Yeah, well, I see this when I do some like the focus groups. If sometimes like, because I'll have them pick a foreperson in the focus group, and Harry probably has a lot more experience than I do at this. But like, if they were not the foreperson, I think they would assert themselves negatively for my case right off the bat, or be able to influence. But I think when someone takes the role as a foreperson, I think they would take the responsibility to just like let others talk more. It's kind of my theory. I don't know if Harry, if you disagree, or what do you think?
I have seen that. It depends on the kind of person. Some people just want to be the foreperson. They just jump in and try to control it. But the savvy ones will try to read the room a little bit and, sit back and say, can I, I mean, if it's 11-1, they probably will be like, okay, well, and try to limit the damages. Whereas, if they feel like they have an opportunity to come in there and be the credible person and try to shift everybody they can. So, yeah, I mean, I have definitely seen a lot of them in focus groups kind of wait and read the room and moderate what they're going to say. Yeah.
That makes sense, because if by some miracle I ever got on a jury, and I've tried, I 100% wouldn't be the foreperson. They would go, "Oh, you're a lawyer, maybe you should be the foreperson." I'd be like, "Fuck no." I'm kicking back. Like, I'm letting everybody, get their stuff out, and then, I'll throw out my 2 cents, my influence here and there. But for the most part, I just want to see what it is they talk about back there. Because I don't know if focus groups, I'll never know, right? It's always the holy grail. I get kicked out of juries in Orange County before I even get questioned or in the box, like, because I was a public defender for so long, and Orange County is very small. It's a very small court system. So the judges know me, all the prosecutors know me, the public defenders know me. And I just get like, the bailiff will come over and go, "Mr. Bruno, you can leave." And I'll go, "But I haven't even gotten questioned
I want
yet.
to say my piece.
I want questions." And they're like,
I want to taint this jury pool.
Yeah, you can leave.
Exactly. Would you leave an attorney on, Keith? Or do you have a hard and fast rule? And I'm curious what you say, Harry.
I don't have a hard and fast rule. My first trial ever, I left on Mrs. King. This is 2003, January of 2003. And probably because it was so obvious. She was an older woman, older lawyer, probably retired, and she just loved me. Maybe I reminded her of her son or something. But defense attorney used to misidentify the exhibits. And this is back when we had the big blow-ups of exhibits. Nobody really used PowerPoints. We had the big poster boards. And so he would always misidentify them. And she would lean over to me and go, "It's exhibit 12. And I go, "Your Honor, I believe counsel's misidentified this again. It's exhibit 12, and I'd have no idea." Yeah. So we had a really good communication, and she was really good for me and ended up being the foreperson. So I haven't had a negative experience, predominantly when I get lawyers in the box. Strangely, they're always like, "I'm way too busy for this stuff, Your Honor." And then the judge is like, they get pissed and they're like, "You're a lawyer. You should know better than anybody." But they almost all have this attitude that, I can't miss 3 days at the office, which is bizarre because, the trial I tried to get on was a month-long criminal case. Like, I can work at night or, whenever. So I never understood that. But mine, they always try to get off. Have you had any that tried to get on?
I feel like this one I just had, there was because it was in Santa Monica, there was a lot of lawyers in the veneer. A lot. More than I've seen in a while. One was this big time partner at a huge firm, their number one rainmaker. And he represents insurance companies, health insurance companies on claims, big time guy. And he would not give me cause, even though he was like, I could set that aside. I'm giving you all the data and information you need to make your own decision. I was
what a dick.
Can't be fair. I was like, "You motherfucker, you can't be fair." He was basically saying, "No, I think I set aside. I want you to have all the data." And he kept giving me thing after thing. He's like, and my wife was recently in a rear end car crash, and I thought that was fraudulent, but I'm just giving you data. Like, I was like, oh, this guy.
One of Uber's largest stockholders, but anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
No, for me, I think it's a mistake to have a hard and fast rule about any profession, any type of person.
You're right.
Yeah, and because you only have 6 bullets, right? I mean, some venues even less. And like, if you just like, I'm going to get rid of all of these, and then you have no more strikes. So I've had amazing lawyers on before. You got to be very careful about them. You got to be very selective about them. I would probably get rid of a lawyer who we didn't hear from enough, as opposed to somebody else who's not going to be a leader. I'd be more comfortable keeping like a quiet juror, even if I would not keep a lawyer unless I felt pretty good that they're probably going to be really good. But sometimes they're great. But I would say that about all leaders, right?
Yeah.
Like if you see somebody who is like, a director of something or a vice president of something or or even a supervisor, you probably have to ask them more questions than everybody else and ask them more open-ended questions so you really see how they feel. But sometimes lawyers can be great. I mean, I've kept lawyers who were like in regulatory stuff. They tend to be great for plaintiffs.
And lawyers can also, depending upon if they give answers like Dan, you had, they're preempt machines. So you can go, okay, this guy's not going out for cause because he knows and he's one of our guys. Like, they're going to have to use a preempt. So, there is a lot of chess to be played with lawyers because both sides are familiar with them. And like, I don't know how your story ended, but I would imagine you used a preempt on that guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Obviously, yeah.
Right.
Dude, I mean, that was my first one, I think, that I used.
You can't not,
Yeah. Preempt machine. What is that? What do you mean by that?
Like, one side has to preempt. It's like auto preempt. Like, I
see what you're saying.
When I was trying a case in Torrance, it involved a guy on a bicycle, and the judge gives all of like any hardship. Like if someone's like, I'm going to miss out on 13 nickels if I, do this jury selection, he gives all of this hardship, but he won't give a cause. I can't recall his name now.
I know who you're talking about. He retired a couple of years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Asian gentleman,
yes,
had like a back problem. So he kind of ambled up to the bench. But it's a bicycle. It's a case involving a guy who died while riding a bike. And we had a guy who was a like security officer at USC. And I didn't know that the culture at USC, like the security guys hate bikes. Like walk your bike is like a big thing at USC. And he was like, oh, I hate people that ride bikes. They're all dangerous. You should see them, coming across campus. Like it was like a dog catcher on a dog bite case. And I couldn't get him off. And that's like, I couldn't get him off for cause. So I'm like, this is an auto preempt. Like I have a guy whose life mission it is to hate people on bicycles. And I've got a guy who died on a bicycle.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Harry, what's your, I haven't really talked to you too much about vibes like Keith was talking about. What's your philosophy on vibes?
I mean, I like, if their vibes are about the question you're talking about, if you really feel like, wow, they're talking about like safety is really important and companies have to do the most they can do, and you're feeling that they're really genuine about it, that's one thing that means a lot to me. But I agree with Keith that if somebody I've seen too many lawyers like somebody who is like, yeah, I generally don't like lawsuits and I kind of think that too many people milk the system, but I think I could listen to your case. And they're like, hey, seems like a cool guy. And I think, yeah, exactly. I think he likes me and I think he's going to see through it. And like, jurors can't see through their cognitive bias. I mean, they can't see through their filters that well. And so I would much rather have somebody a juror who is like with you on all the themes and the values of your case. Even if you're like, oh, they seem kind of cranky and they don't really seem like they like me that much. I mean, that doesn't mean too much to me. I mean, years ago, I wrote an article about that, about like both sides usually like the friendly jurors and both sides usually hate the unfriendly jurors, but they're good for one side or the other, right? So yeah, you can't fall into like their personality or somebody has like a, resting whatever face or whatever. I mean, I've had a lot of good jurors who seem like, wow, that person seemed kind of cranky and they didn't like me, but on paper, their answers were good. They usually are pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to the conversation we've had too about jurors who say they don't want to be there. That doesn't mean they're automatically bad for us at all. This trial, like I just did, this woman was like, I really do not want to be here at all. And sure enough, she wanted to give the most money.
The same thing happens with like crying. Like I've seen jurors crying in closings and crying in focus groups. And like when I see it, they're like, oh, that juror's for me. And I always go, I've seen it too many times. The jurors who are crying are usually going to defense you.
Really?
The jurors who are angry are the ones who are with you.
Harry, in our Doe case, remember we had, in front of Marianne Murphy, we had a nervous breakdown on the jury. And I initially thought, okay, she must be really fighting for these girls. And, and it turns out it was the opposite. She was like overwhelmed by, the other people in the room that were saying, this is a horrible injury. This is something that we really have to stand up for. And I was like, geez, I couldn't imagine breaking down in jury deliberations because my fellow jurors wanted to give more money. It's not your money. But
that was a sex abuse case, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a note that like a juror wasn't cooperating and was breaking down, and like there were tears and all this other stuff. I mean, it was wild.
That happened in that San Diego case I did with Claire, Harry, the TBI. The foreperson, fucking a lawyer, I left on, and she was crying because they gave too much money. Like she was just very yeah, she just
crying like when they came out to read the verdict or something.
She like walked out there, stormed out. She was like the one no on the damages, and like see, in a way, again, I think it helped. Like some of the jurors were like, yeah, like she was so aggressive on low damages that it forced us to all solidify in the other direction.
Polarized them.
Yes, exactly. Polarized it.
So I'm talking more in like during the trial itself, not the deliberations, but sometimes the ones who are really crying a lot, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to give money or they're angry at the defendant. They just kind of are feeling like, I feel bad for him. Then they go, I feel so bad for that guy, but it's his own fault, and they cry. If they think it's the defendant's fault, anger kind of overwhelms them. They don't cry. They just look pissed off.
Yeah.
Or get pissed off.
And it's very similar to like when, like, let's say you have an amazing verdict, you're like over the moon, and you go out and you talk to the jurors. Some of the first things they'll do is they'll be critical of you, and then they'll go to the defense attorney and they'll go, oh, you did your best. Like you were very prepared and sharp and all this. And I'm like, all right, fine. You just gave me $25 million and you have critique of me. So there must be some psychological component to that where, maybe you want to make him feel better because his client just got tagged. But I noticed that people do that. So their outward expression can be very different than how they're voting. And, I've been burned by it too. It's not like every time it's been 25. I mean, I tried a case in Florida, on the west coast of Florida. And I mean, the jury just loved every moment of me, and it was fun to do. And they deliberated for about an hour before coming back with the defense verdict, just like, hey guys, what happened? I thought we were cool.
Well, so let me ask you then, Harry, or I guess for both of you then, like you want to get those angry jurors. Like, are there things you're trying to pick up on to find out, like just based on their either expressions, like if they are going to be an angry juror to your benefit?
I think it's more how they feel about the issues. Are they going to be, do they take this shit seriously? Are they, when you talk about, whatever it is your case is about, safety rules, or driving or policies or training, you want the jurors who are like, every company I've worked for does a ton of training before you start working. Like I would never, that's super important. And like, and then the juror who's like super nice, who's like, I've worked in jobs before where they didn't really train me. And, I've seen a bunch of safety OSHA rules that are kind of a little ridiculous, but I'm super sympathetic. I mean, like, I don't want that juror. I mean, because their sympathy, it really is true. Sympathy doesn't get you that far.
I totally agree.
In these cases. Yeah. And so it's more like, are they going to, it's not so much that they look pissed off in jury selection, but it's like, is this person capable of actually getting mad about the stuff in our case? Or is this just like, this is not that big a deal to me?
And I think, I'm curious, Keith, your thoughts, but I think that's why I really like the questions you give me, Harry, just about like, who here gets really upset by irresponsible drivers or drivers that don't pay attention? And then whereas who's kind of like, people drive, they're going to be...
Everybody
speeds,
everyone
texts and drives.
Nobody signals all the time. I mean, like...
No, I really like those questions, but I think that applies to like any kind of safety violation or, like, because you can always tell like the Boy Scouts who get really mad are going to get mad if you have those facts in your case. Keith, what do you think?
Yeah.
I think those questions are very revealing because people, like your leaders, are going to have an opinion on those questions, but more importantly, they're going to want to express it, and so they will. So the people that are just kind of like wallpaper or whatever, they might give answers, but I think you revealed I have a small business and we've been sued for an ADA, 14 times, and this is all just nonsense, and you're like, my business is super safe. You always see that too, with the people that don't actually care about safety. They announce first that everything's safe and everything's fine, which is why they resent kind of the question. And you're never going to turn those people. It's like I'm in Orange County and I still don't know how to figure this out. I don't have an answer to this. But we have jurors that their beginning point is, well, I would never sue. Now, that's total bullshit. They're the very first people to sue if like somebody's tree encroaches onto their property 6 inches. But they have this. It's like, I would never sue, but, I understand there's a system. Okay, fine. I can be fair, that kind of thing. So it's like the person that acknowledges the question only to dismiss it as though because it's not a real problem is a difficulty for me.
Yeah. How do you recommend handling that, Harry? I got a lot of that too in this last trial. Like, I just think too many people sue. I would never sue. If they say that, how would you throw that back?
I've had some good jurors who say that, but then you say, well, how do you feel about others that do? And some of them will be like, do you think that they're greedy? And sometimes they'll say, no, I don't judge them at all. It's just something I don't feel comfortable doing. And sometimes they'll say things like, I just can't afford it, or I can't afford a lawyer because they don't understand how contingency works, or sometimes they'll say some other reason why. But yeah, the more telling thing for me is like if they say, yeah, and I think anyone who does sue that says something about their character or something. For sure, you get rid of them. But I always like to kind of try to preempt it by talking in the mini opening about how this is a really important case and talking about accountability. Because to me, I think if you had a bunch of jurors all saying the same thing like that, I would say, well, do you understand that our system is like a lawsuit is just like there's a dispute and the other side is not taking responsibility. So how would you handle it if somebody, didn't take responsibility? Lawsuits are just disputes. Should we not have disputes? But because I think when you kind of frame it differently, a lot of jurors understand. What's the one question? I've written a question, I think, a couple times for you, Dan, where it's like, a car crash case. And then one of the first questions is like, do you feel like it's important to hold a careless driver responsible or no? Because that's the other choice, right? No lawsuits means no one is held responsible at all.
And I think you've kind of written it where it's like, you can kind of give the scale it, right? It's like, who thinks are some people think that these lawsuits should be filed? That's how you hold unsafe drivers accountable. Others, like at the other end, they think these are totally unnecessary. It's a drain in our system. These are terrible for society. I think that's kind of how you've written it before.
You could say, how do you think we should hold careless people accountable then?
Or do lawsuits does anyone think that they make the world safer?
If you feel like you need a dose of pushing back, I think I wouldn't resist doing that. I wouldn't do it for one person, but I would certainly do it if it starts snowballing a little bit.
I think that's a big point.
Just to get them back on track.
Because so much like we're taught, or not taught, but there's a lot of philosophies out there that you really got to just be super negative. But I've done that, and like we did that in a slip and fall we tried earlier this year, and it totally snowballed like real bad. And then I needed to push back a little more than I did, I think. How much pushing back do you do, Keith? Like to make a good point or like a positive point about your case?
I have done a very unadvisably insane level of pushback. And here's, in all seriousness, though, it has always worked because I'm not doing it as a technique. I'm like genuinely frustrated or genuinely like exacerbated by, some of the shit that I'm hearing. The guy with the bike, right? And the USC security guy. When I couldn't get him off for cause, I used him as an example. And I'm like, does anybody think that that's fair? That we should have a bike case and we would have a juror who admittedly hates all bikers and wants to arrest them? Like, does that sound fair to anybody? And it'd be like, objection. And I'm like, what's the objection? It goes to cause. I'm asking about fairness, and the judge wasn't, he wasn't the most on top of it guy, so I could get away with it. But I wasn't doing it to be mean or anything. Like I can remember I sat on counsel table and I just kind of like threw my hands up in the air and let them flop down. And I'm like, who here thinks this is fair? Having a jury with someone that is saying all these things and he's free to hold these beliefs, but who thinks this is fair? So I wouldn't recommend that, really. And I think the only reason I got away with it because it was contextual and it was actually like, it was a true emotion. I've never cried in a jury trial. I've done a lot of them and I've done ones that are horrific, that people are murdered. I've never cried, so I'm not that guy who's going to try to muster emotion so that emotion mirrors back at me. I'm here to present the case. So when I get like really frustrated with jurors in voir dire, it is genuine, at least.
What are they pushing back to you? I do agree. And I also don't, I think my fear a lot of times, and where I don't do it, and I think it's a mistake, is like, I'm just so worried about offending anyone. And I think it's okay. I think we got to get over that. Keith, you don't seem to have a problem with that in trial, but it's hard for a lot of lawyers to get over that. You got to be like, you just don't want to piss off anyone in jury selection because they're going to keep it with you. But I think some jurors kind of expect you a little bit to push back.
So this goes back to, we had talked, like, it feels really good to be liked during jury selection because it happens first and it's reassuring and it tells your brain that things are going okay. But the reality is that if they end up on the jury, they're going to be with you for weeks. By the time they have to make a decision, they're going to know exactly who you are and they're going to have seen you. So you don't have to be liked. Like, you don't have to be that guy who's funny, even if you're not. You just have to actually be consistent and be you. And if you can do that and drive it through the case. And so if you're getting a whole bunch of like weird negativity from certain jurors, I mean, Harry earlier this year helped Nick and I pick a jury where I literally had to sub Nick out because we were getting insane negativity. And he was just like, dude, you're up, And so I'm like, oh, great. I think if we're focused on like, how do they view me? Yeah. Right. It's not going to turn out as well as it should.
I think that's extremely important advice. And I still struggle with it, but I think that's very important. It's okay to not win the popularity contest. As long as you're credible and respectful, I think it's okay to like.
Can I tell a quick story?
Absolutely.
All right. So this is 100% true story. Like 12, 15 years ago, something like that. I went and I saw Nick do a voir dire, and it was probably like the first time I had seen Nick Rowley do voir dire. And as you know, like his style is so like emotional and it's close and it's like very intimate, I guess, with jurors. And that's not me. That's just not my personality. So I'm sitting there watching this. And there's two other lawyers that are also sitting in the gallery with me. And they're watching this. And I can hear like them talk a little bit about this. And I'm like, wow, this guy's wild. Like he's like looking in jurors' eyes and asking them how they feel and, and talking about brutal honesty and everything. And I'm like, this is wild. So then I go to this, my friend Afshin Mosafari was having a firm opening party. And, he had just founded his firm, was having some party in Santa Monica. And these two guys were there. And I'm listening to them at this party and they're kind of clowning Nick. Like they were like talking shit about his voir dire and like, oh, that's not going to work. And he's like, super intimate with the jurors and that's, kind of bullshit. And like, you got to do it like this. And I'm just like, all right, I never even heard of these guys, but, and they're sitting there, like critiquing Nick Rowley and his voir dire. But then what a lot of people don't do is they go to like opening statement or they go to closing argument or they go to voir dire and they don't go to anything else. And I went back and saw him in trial and saw the closing argument. And what struck me was the reason why Nick's voir dire worked really well is because that's who he was throughout the entire trial. And so maybe there were jurors that were like turned off by him at first that were like, is this guy putting on shtick or an act or something like that? But because it carried through every single day of trial, they saw, oh no, that's the guy. Like that's the real guy. That's how he's treating witnesses. That's how he's treating co-counsel. That's how he's doing it. And I think it's a really good reminder that back to what we were saying, where your goal is not to be liked by them. Your goal is to do what you do well and pick a jury because you have a job to do. You have to pick the jury that's going to then decide your case. And you can't be this like, oh, this is my jury picking personality over here. And then this is my direct exam personality. No, you just have to be you and it has to carry through. And then at the end of the case, jurors are going to like you or not, but who cares? They're going to fight for your client if they think you're on the side of right.
All right. I really want to thank one of our fabulous new sponsors, Advocate Capital Inc. It is a premier provider of strategic financial products for successful trial law firms. Advocate is passionate about helping plaintiff attorneys get better results for their clients, mainly run through their AdvoTrack case expense funding service. AdvoTrack is a proprietary software platform that allows law firms to track their their case expenses case by case, so they can recover the borrowing costs, which makes the net cost of borrowing zero on the cases they win. Since 1999, Advocate Capital has served the plaintiff bar and enjoys a client base that extends nationwide. For more information, visit www.advocatecapital.com or call them at 1-877-894-9724. I just want to say personally, I've used Advocate Capital for about 10 years exclusively. They are incredible to work with, great customer service, and to me, it helps us level the playing field when, you need funding to get experts to really work up the case. It's totally worth it. It's a great investment, and they're super easy to work with. And this AdvoTrack does work really well. My bookkeeper loves it. I love it. You can really track stuff easily, and it's just great. It's a great product, frankly. Wouldn't pitch anything on here that I don't personally trust. And these guys are great people. They're out of Tennessee, I believe. But so thank you for Advocate Capital for sponsoring. Please reach out to them. Reach out to me, and I can give you some more background because, like I said, I personally have used them for a decade. So thank you, Advocate Capital.
Awesome. Yeah. And like any advocate or any of these companies, the most expensive thing for trial lawyers when you're thinking about expenses is losing the case. So if it's something that can help you afford to do a better job trying your case, do it.
Let's see. We're talking some vibes here with Keith Bruno. It always has good vibes. So Keith, I'm just curious, your transition from, because you've done like 150 jury trials at this point or more, right? I mean,
About 200.
200. And when you first started doing like your first civil jury trial, coming from criminal, I mean, was it hugely different for you? I mean, was your approach different? Obviously, I'm sure now you've done a lot of civil trials. You've adapted it too, but I'm curious that transition from criminal to civil.
The first one wasn't because it had a criminal element to it.
Okay.
It was a dram shop law case where my client had been stabbed. And so that doesn't really count. The second one was in Vista, and that was a totally different world. And I wish I could say that after that, I learned, the lesson that needed to be learned and adjusted, and then it all was right with the world. But really, it took me a few years to really kind of understand all of the differences. And the thing that I'm doing now in my practice is I try cases at a level 3. When you're in criminal defense, out of 10, right? You try cases in between an 8 and a 9. Because every witness you're fighting with, every witness is against you. You have professional witnesses and cops, pathologists, experts and all that kind of stuff. And I really had to tone it down a lot.
Explain what the scale is that you're referring to.
Sure. So my resting metabolic rate is at like a 7 for aggressiveness at all times.
Well, yeah, because you're from fucking Philadelphia, bro.
Yes.
I mean,
it's hard. Before I started trying the Monsanto cases, I had to make a promise that I was going to be at a 3. And what I did was I took this, I had a Post-it note that I would carry with me everywhere. And before I ever spoke in court, I would just set it down on the table and I would look at it and I would go, you got to be a 3. And it was like a gimmick, but it helped me calm down and it helped me think things through. And I've used it now throughout every case that I try now. I mean, you can get up to a 7, you can get up to an 8 when it's appropriate. But if your resting metabolic rate is at a 3, you just have much more credibility, I've found, because we are asking people for money. We're not saying that the government did this frame up and, my client's really innocent and he's looking at 25 to life and it's an outrage that he's even sitting in this chair. We don't have those arguments. And it took me a while to realize them because I had skill. I could do things in a courtroom that made me feel comfortable, but it wasn't hitting because my delivery and tone was completely off.
I totally agree with that. I've very similar. I can get real hot and, try to tear apart the witness. And then I've had to really learn to just tone it down. Especially, I mean, and it's the case I just tried. There was no villain. Defense attorney was really nice. The doctor was gave a lot of concession. I hate it. It was awful. Like in closing, I'm like, man, like so much of my strength comes from being able to like get fired up, get the jury angry at the defendant. But in this one, it was tough. It was just really tough to like really just, I spent a lot of time just talking about chronic pain and like what that's like on somebody, like what kind of toll that takes. And that's what I kind of do, in those kind of cases, like with the doctor. My first questions with the defense doctor will be, chronic pain is one of the worst things a human has to deal with. Isn't that right, doctor? And it can affect sleep. If you can't sleep well because of the pain, then you're worse the next day, and it actually compounds, doesn't it, doctor? And I'm like reading these Mayo Clinic articles on chronic pain, and I'm having this conversation with the doctor, and you spend your life trying to help people with chronic pain, right? And that relationship with a doctor and a patient is sacred in our society, and because chronic pain is so terrible. And just getting him to give me all that stuff before, so I don't really even need to like rip his head off at all, because like.
Yeah, so now imagine if you started with like his bills or something.
No, I know that, but so I just don't do that really anymore.
Right.
I'm really trying to do kind of like I haven't articulated as well as you do, but the same thing, just like really starting at a 3 with all these witnesses, because you could be a bully,
Yeah, you're preparing. It forces you to prepare more, because when you're doing like an aggressive cross, I mean, I've always got that in me. I mean, F. Lee Bailey would go to the podium with no notes and just start beating the shit out of the witness. And it's a talent, right? It's a talent that some people have and most people don't. But it's a mistake to rely upon that, because also jurors don't hear the same way. They don't hear it the same way as a Philadelphia audience might hear it, right? So they just see like this freaking wild man up there yelling at people, witness after witness. And it's like, oh my God, like what's going on? What's wrong with him? As opposed to, there's definitely jurors out there that want to learn about chronic pain. And guess what? You're teaching them about it through their expert. That takes a lot more preparation than I'm just going to, get in there and tear apart his inconsistencies, because, I can argue over nothing all day. That skill will leave me maybe when I'm like real old, but then I'll be retired anyway. I always have that in my bag. Like if you want to fight about nothing, I'm your guy. But it takes much more, preparation and intelligence to sit down and think about what the audience needs to hear from these witnesses.
Yeah, and I think that's, in a way, you're not cross-examining jurors, but I think that the way you approach mentally jury selection, as opposed to these people are all going to hate your case, to I'm curious what this person's like, what they like to do for fun. I'm like, we've talked about it on the podcast before, but David Ball really had a good philosophy on that. It's like when they walk in.
Go ahead, because I was just going to ask you about this.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think
the number one job in jury selection is to have fun or something, or to look like you're having fun, something like that. And I'm like, how the fuck does that happen? I don't necessarily have fun.
I think just curiosity, just take away the fear and just have more curiosity about like, maybe this panel is amazing.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not, but just like, because once you're curious, then you kind of hear from everybody without prejudging them, and you're not like attacking them yet. And then you can wait till a little bit later where you can go, okay, 10 of these guys are horrible and I got to go after them for cause. But I'm glad I talked to them, because you know what? There was probably like 4 that I looked at them and I thought they would be awful, and they're actually pretty good, And so just having that, curiosity of like, some are going to be bad. I always tell lawyers, no matter what venue you're in the worst venue in the world, right? You can find 12 good jurors.
Yeah.
Or in downtown LA, there's going to be some out-of-state lawyers don't know this. They're like, oh, California is easy. All the jurors in LA are great. Like, and they come here and they try a case and they're like, they were mean. And you're like, yeah, not everybody is. 6 out of 10 are good here. 4 out of 10 are good, somewhere else.
Harry, that's such a good point about curiosity. When we were in New Mexico trying the penis case, the subject matter, to a Catholic dominant jury pool, I went in there thinking they would have sympathy. Like it would be universal sympathy for this guy. And it was the opposite. And we got a lot of cause challenges because.
Wait, how so?
There was far more, and Harry, you can tell me if I'm right or not, or how you saw it. But I thought there was far more skepticism about like what this guy was doing with his penis and how old he is, and he's not married, and why is he even involved with testosterone and injections into his penis. Like it was very judgmental on him. They didn't even reach the mental question of what did this medical facility do to him. And I was kind of like, oh man, I was glad I wasn't asking the questions at that point. But it took me back.
But I also remember that I remember we were talking that morning and Keith was concerned. I mean, I was concerned too, but like, are they going to give a shit about this guy who's widowed, no girlfriend, in his 70s, 60s, late 60s.
He was in his late 60s
almost
at
70,
the time,
yeah.
and a lawyer, a personal injury.
Yeah, well, that too, yeah. But then, yeah, it's like, well, what's he gonna do? And but I remember one of the jurors, kind of said it. What we were all worried about. She was like, I don't understand why this guy's. He's old enough, and he doesn't have. I mean, what does he need to do with this?
Yeah, it's like he shouldn't be having sex anyway. With
Yeah,
himself.
he basically said that. Like, he's done. Like, his sex life is over.
That's
basically.
what it was.
And
He's
then,
done, yeah.
but a bunch of remember when she said that, a bunch of the other jurors gasped, and that's when I think you and I looked at each other and we're like, okay, this does matter to a lot of them, though.
Right.
Some of them are totally. It wasn't like 100% of them were like nodding along with her. There were actually people who were really upset when she said that. And then it just became a matter of just find the good ones and get as many of the bad ones off. And luckily,
did you guys ask that question just yourself to say, he's almost 70, he's 70. What good is sex going to be for him? Did you guys ask that, or just waited for a juror to give it to you?
We gave a mini opening, and I think, if memory serves, and there was like a questionnaire that set forth a lot, and so they knew, they knew about who he was. Harry, you're right. That returns to your original point, which is curiosity is going to be your greatest advantage and you're giving her room. Like, it was shocking, but she wasn't alone.
Yeah, I don't think it's that shocking. I mean, a lot of people think that. I mean,
I've seen this dude's penis, and I'm like, oh my God, this is horrific. So I have a mindset going in that everybody's going to hear that he had a bad penis injury, and they're going to go like, oh man,
let's write a check right now.
Right.
Yeah.
That wasn't how it was. But it was such an amazing thing because, I'm a Catholic. And so I really could identify with these people, and we quoted scripture throughout open and exams and certainly close. And you could really see where the betrayal aspect, the Judas aspect of what they did to this man was the remaining jurors that actually comprised our jury. They weren't letting this go.
How do you quote scripture during exams? Like direct or cross? What'd you do there?
Well, so probably because I have a son who's also in Catholic school. And so I've, read the Bible quite a bit, and I've read the children's version, which helps stick in your mind quite a bit as well. It always kind of is just organic, right? So somebody will say, the penis is dead and it's not coming back, and, I don't know, I'll say, well, there's only been two things that have come back, and one's Jesus and the other's Lazarus or something like that.
Oh, okay.
The juror will go like, okay, I wouldn't do it just to kind of ingratiate myself to them. But there were a lot of, the Bible's a great story, whether you're Catholic or Jewish or, of any other persuasion. There's a lot of lessons there that are transferable to today's life. And if you have at least a conversant knowledge of them, and your audience does as well, again, it's about your audience. You can use that, to your advantage, because it makes your point a lot more quickly, and it makes your point stick with people who have that frame of reference.
No, I think that makes sense. Harry, do you ever have your attorneys quote the Bible in jury selection?
I've seen it a couple times. Yeah, for sure. I think, depending on the venue. I think it's always good. And you can, voir dire, I think you have more latitude to kind of talk about, to weave it into your voir dire a little bit to either build credibility or, something along those lines, but not too much. In LA, we don't get to do it quite as much, right?
I don't do it quite as much in LA either.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
People look at me like, the what?
Yeah, that's funny.
I think one time a juror came in, and had like a bunch of stuff on their forehead right here. And I knew it was Ash Wednesday, but I think one of the lawyers was like, I think you got something over here, and like, and I could see, I looked around and like most of the jurors also were kind of with them. Like, yeah, what is that on your, you might want to go in the bathroom, and it's a different world.
Yeah, no, look, just going back to this curiosity thing. I think I've noticed since like that David Ball episode, I'm genuinely really curious about all their different jobs they do. It's kind of cool. Like in, this last judge I had, He was very interested. You could just tell, just super interested. Like, oh, that sounds like a really cool job. You work for SpaceX. Oh, like, but I think it's all about us having that mentality going in is going to change everyone's jury selection. Because I used to be so scared of these jurors before, years ago, just like scared of what they were going to say, scared they're going to hate my case, that they were automatically going to think we're all billboard lawyers and all that. So it's just a totally different frame of reference.
I used to think that they could say something and then they indoctrinate the entire audience.
Yeah.
And now your case is over. I don't believe that
No.
anymore, certainly.
Yeah. Well, so Keith, how do you, I always like to find out how people talk about money. How do you address money in voir dire?
Head on. Usually I have given a mini open, right? And even in jurisdictions where they've never heard of it, I've got a brief and I try to explain why that's really important. Basically, if you have a dispute over, and sometimes I'll tell this to jurors, if this case was about $10,000, right? Who gets $10,000? Is $10,000 owed or is it not owed? Nobody would have an issue with it. Everybody would be like, oh yeah, sure. I can figure out where the $10,000 goes. The minute you say $10 million, now, for reasons I don't know, but I'd like to hear, people have strong feelings about that. Why is that? Can we talk about that? Because this is one of those cases. So we got to talk about this. And especially with money, I think my job is to roll the ball out there and really get a discussion going, right? Liability, if someone ran a red light and hit somebody that had a green, even if the defense is disputing it, jurors we don't need to talk about that so much, right? It's not going to, they need to, and they'll get frustrated because they don't have any of the evidence. You're just talking to them about this stuff. But about money, people have very different attitudes about money. Some cultures, it's impolite to talk about it. And so you do get this kind of robust discussion going. And that's where, I don't try cases by myself. So I'm always like, that's the time when everybody needs to focus and concentrate and really figure out, okay, is this person going to be a good money juror or not? Don't just leave it to me. Like if you were sleeping during the first part of voir dire, wake up now and let's have a team discussion about this because it's so important. And it's so vast.
So is that literally how you kick off the topic?
It just depends. I have done it that way before, by introducing an alternate universe, right? Where we have no problem with money. And then there's this universe where we do. Now, I've usually already told them that this is the kind of case that we have. Sometimes I'm not just talking about the bottom line. I'm talking about money for pain and suffering, the human asset damages. And I want to, kind of subdivide it into their attitudes about that. And I might set up another alternative universe where it's like, a lot of people I know are okay with the medical bills and the time off of work and the hard costs. But this other thing over here is much more difficult to evaluate. What are your thoughts on it? Those kinds of things. But I don't think I have any kind of, there's not like a setup and punchline, like how Nick used to do brutal honesty. Will you talk to me? Brutal honesty. There was a very formulaic way of going about it, but I don't have that when it comes to money damages. I just want people to talk. And, I'm trying to be mindful as well of time. And if we have like 4 big talkers and I'm like clock's ticking and I'm like, I don't know how the 80% of the room feels, that's a problem, right? And that's a me problem. I have to direct that and get that out of people so that, Harry and other people that are on my team can actually evaluate. What's the point in telling them to wake up and pay attention if I'm only talking to 4 people, which can happen, especially if you're getting either the right or the wrong answers. If you're getting kind of polar extreme answers, our tendency is to stay with that person because we also don't want to look scared. Like, oh yeah, lawsuits are terrible, non-economic damages. My brother was in the military and he was killed in Iraq and we got $100,000, and you're like, oh shit, he just mentioned the trifecta: Iraq, brother killed, 100,000 in death benefit. Let's get out of here really quickly. Yeah. Right.
What do you do if a juror is just talking too long? I had that happen recently too. And it's just like, what's your polite way to shut them up?
I try to be nice and be like, well, we could talk for hours, sir. That's pretty obvious, but I got to move on to these other people. Like I'll explain, that there's other people here and I need to be mindful of them. And I think, that's going, he'll recognize that or she'll recognize that. And also other people will appreciate that, because sometimes, jurors are waiting to talk. Like, they're waiting to get their point of view across. And again, it's like your guy, your lawyer guy from your last trial. It is data, and we need data. I can't emphasize enough. Like, when you take the vanity and the ego out of jury selection, you're up there, mesmerizing them with your words. It's like, no, there's a job here. There's a job that we have to do. We have to get as much data out of people. I mean, when we get the juror lists, if you looked at them, would you check only 4 or 5 of their Facebook pages or social media? And if you found like really good stuff, you just stop there and do a deep dive into them? No, you got to check them all.
Yeah.
And that type of philosophy should also translate into in-person questioning of them.
There's nothing I hate more than getting back there. The voir dire's done, and the lawyer goes, "Hey Harry, I think we got to strike number 7. I'm just worried that he's going to think blah 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 blah." And I'm going, "Why didn't you ask him that?" You think, and I know the answer sometimes is they're thinking like, "Well, that's what you do, Harry, right?" And like, no, I don't read minds and just tell you without, I can tell you exactly what that guy thinks about everything. That's where the curiosity comes in. So don't leave, a concern unasked. Doesn't mean that you have to cross-examine them and be like, "I bet you hate lawsuits," but just like, how do you feel about it? I mean, you're like you work in construction. Do you see a bunch of, or maybe not? And then sometimes they'll surprise you and they'll be like, "No, actually, I care about, actually my workers, they never say that they're hurt unless they're really hurt. And actually they probably work through injury. So like if one of them tells me they're hurt, I know that they are or something. You never know what they're going to say. So yeah, you got to talk to them. You can't leave. There's nothing worse than getting back there and you're like, we didn't even talk to this one guy. Because if he's a leader, I got to tell you, I got to strike him. And maybe we wouldn't have had to strike him.
Harry, why do you think people think your job is like to divine
I know
knowledge from nothing? Like you just have this gift,
don't know.
I
know. I don't know why that is. I once had a guy tell me years ago, he's like, I worked with Dr. Phil on a case years ago. He was like a defense guy, I think. This is like years ago. And he was like, he was amazing. Like we did this focus group and he just sat out there in the parking lot and he watched a juror walk in and he goes, "That guy's going to be a defense juror." And sure enough, he was. And I was going, and I asked him, I was like, "Did he recruit the jurors?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, okay.
Wait, Dr. Phil, the Oprah? Dr.
Yeah,
Phil?
he was
he was a jury consultant. Yeah,
What?
that's
I
how
didn't
he's.
know
That's
that.
the only thing he's a doctor of. Yeah.
Is that in your future then, Harry? Or are you?
It is. I'm waiting for Oprah. Does Oprah watch this? We got to get her on.
I don't know that Oprah
after
and
Tim
Dr.
Robinson.
Phil are friends anymore, because
Yeah, I don't
Dr.
think they
Phil's
are.
kind of like a Trump.
I don't think they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Dr. Oz. All the doctors that she puts on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Oprah's got a bad track record of doctors.
Yeah, she
You
does.
better
Yeah.
be Mr. Plotkin.
I know. I'm not enough of a megalomaniac to get, go on TV and give people advice where I'm not qualified to give them advice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, I can't just look at a person and
I've had that happen.
no voir dire needed.
I had that happen with co-counsel where it was stunning. This juror you couldn't have scripted worse answers for a plaintiff's juror. Like he was gone. There was no question about it. And my co-counsel, who remained nameless, goes, "We're keeping him." Now he didn't do anything during the trial. He didn't have a role other than just to sit there. He goes, "We're keeping him." And I'm like, "No, we're not. We're getting rid of him." And he goes, "I know people. It's my gift." I'm like, "Well, my gift is preemptory challenge. He's gone."
Jeez.
Yeah, that's funny. All right. Well, with that, this has been an awesome episode. Vibes. That's the theme of this one. Vibes with the jurors. Yeah. Thank you so much, man. Been wanting to have you on this for a long time. So proud of you, seeing all your success. I mean, your last year has just been absolutely bonkers, dude. So really proud of you, man. Don't tell Angela I messed up her pronunciation of her last name.
I will not. Everybody does. I don't know why it's so hard to get.
I want to also end by answering a question that I actually get asked a lot, which is sometimes people will say, "Do you think it's a mistake for a different lawyer to give the opening that did the voir dire?" Some people are like, "No, you have to build that relationship in voir dire to do the opening. You can't have somebody else do it." I mean, so the answer to that question is every verdict that Keith and Nick Rowley have gotten together. It's just proof, because has there ever been one that you guys did where the same person did the voir dire and the opening? Probably
No,
never.
we always,
Not, yeah.
and I mean, there's a lot of times where, he'll always start voir dire. And there's times where I'll come in and do a round and I'll always do opening statement. So predominantly that's how it breaks down. And if you're a team that actually functions as a team, not only do I see no problem with it, I see the benefit of it. And it's also using your team's talents appropriately. Like, there's a quarterback and there's an inside linebacker, like vital football players, right? Again, most of our cases too, they're long, right? Like they're minimum 2 weeks, right? So the jury, by the time they have to make a decision, again, they're going to know who you are and who your co-counsel is.
Yeah, no, that's very true. All right, with that, thank you to our sponsors. Thanks to Law Pods. This has been a great episode. Really love talking to you, man. This is awesome.
If you're enjoying the podcast, the best compliment you can give us is sharing it with a colleague who would find it valuable. For all the best clips from the podcast, follow us on social media. You can find those links in the show notes. Have a jury selection story to share? Email us at podcast@pickingjustice.com and we may address it in a future episode. Until next time, remember, you're not just picking a jury, you're picking justice. Produced and powered by Law Pods.